guess let's get started. Welcome to week 8 of the Survive and Thrive webinars from Sussex Innovation in collaboration with Gatwick Diamond Business. And today's session is all about social media, which is becoming an increasingly important way of getting your message out there. If you weren't doing social media before lockdown, I think lots of business owners are seeing it as one of the only viable ways of networking and getting your message out currently. So I'm joined by 3 panelists. I'm joined by the disembodied voice of Phil Hawkins. Phil is the MD at Culinary Social, which is a social marketing agency for startups and SMEs. We've also got Susi Doherty, who's creative director at Vervate and Value and Visuals. She specialises in helping businesses get more out of photography and video. And then my final guest is my colleague at Sussex Innovation, Lawrence Grant, who's our head of investment projects and master networker and consummate LinkedIn professional, who's going to be tackling some of the questions around moving your real life networking into more of a virtual space.
Glad you didn't build us up too much there, Joseph. You know?
You're too modest, Lawrence. So I just want to start with Phil. I guess the question everyone's asking right now is how people are using social media to respond to the crisis. And I wondered what you've seen, what kind of trends you've noticed, and what the kind of the good, bad, and the ugly, if you like, of how businesses are handling social media at the moment has come into play.
Yeah, cool. Hi, well, firstly, apologies, my camera's not working. Having some technical difficulties that I just cannot resolve, so I'm afraid you just have to hear me. A lot of changes, actually. Obviously, consumer behaviour has changed. There's an awful lot more people at home. So what we're noticing is rather than engagement and stuff going down, reach of content and everything has gone up. There's just more people. They're spending more time on social media. But the big thing that has changed is the need to not sell. This isn't a time to take advantage of a pandemic in a let me sell to you way. People aren't responding well to that. So people have changed the kind of content that they're producing, and it's moved a lot more towards community building. It's becoming helpful. It's sharing tips. It's sharing advice. The important thing, and we wrote a blog on it right at the beginning, was the importance of don't sell, but don't go quiet either. So the key thing was you don't really want to be pushing your products down people's throats, but also you don't want to make it look like you've gone out of business in 3 or 4 months' time when someone checks out your social media and you've got no content. So it was just trying to get that nice mix. And a couple of examples that we've done with our clients and stuff that I've seen outside of that was along the lines of using, one of our clients is in holistic health. So what they've done, and we've helped them to amplify this, was rather than trying to get practitioners, etc., to advertise on their website, she quickly put together this excellent guide of how, as a practitioner, you could learn a new skill. How could you do, for example, virtual consultations? How can you move into digital? And all she basically did was went along the theme of how can you use lockdown to upskill yourself. And she gave this fantastic document, white paper, that literally told them pretty much everything they could do. What skills are transferable into which practices, how to set up virtual. So again, it was along the lines of helping. And another one of our clients is quite a large mental health charity. And they decided really, really simply, every day for, I think, about 3 weeks, they would get a business leader or someone within their organization just to record a 30-second positive top tip on their phones of literally how to survive lockdown. So again, it's not about pushing anything. It wasn't selling tickets to an event. It was just giving you some top tips, and it was meaning about sharing with the community. And that was the biggest change. So a big move away from selling and more into engaging with your target audience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's I've just realised in my rush to introduce all the panelists, I didn't actually introduce myself. My name's Joseph. I'm Sussex Innovations head of PR and communications. So a lot of what I do touches on social media from more of a kind of content standpoint. And just to add to what Phil was saying there, I think it's a kind of universal truth across any kind of form of content marketing that, you know, the key thing is providing people with value, whatever they see as value. I tend to kind of stick to the rules of, is it interesting, is it useful, is it entertaining? If it's at least one of those three things, then it's probably worth posting. It's my kind of 2 cents on that. Just to come over to Susie, who I was really keen to get on this webinar, just to really stress the importance of visuals in the social space. They're really, you know, one of the best ways of cutting through no matter what channel you're using. So Susie, can you just give us some advice for someone who's creating any kind of social photography or video for the first time, particularly at the moment, and what they might need to know?
Yeah, sure. I did think actually I might start with just saying what visual content is, because it might sound obvious, but I do get asked it quite a lot, and it's actually literally anything visual. So it's from photos, videos, which is what we specialise in, to infographics, GIFs, the whole gamut, basically. And they are, like you say, they are so important and often really quite overlooked, strangely enough. Either they're overlooked in the way that people just chuck everything out there and don't really think about it, or they just don't use enough. And really, it's such an accessible, attention-grabbing, friendly, authentic way of getting your content out there, especially on social. And they're brilliant for repurposing and great for SEO. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. So I thought I'd just say that to start with. But Vervate is, like I said a minute ago, is our photography and video company. And our sister company is Value and Visuals, which came out of working with lots of clients who are asking the same sort of stuff all the time around how to use and strategize. So I was going to talk about that kind of element now, and I thought that was going to be way too boring, quite frankly, because I shouldn't say that, but it can get really stodgy, you know, the back office stuff like strategizing about backups and things like that. And actually I'm going to try and screen share. Going in. Okay. Where have you gone?
Just, before you go on, Susie, I just want to check in with
Has everyone got it?
Is everyone able to see the screen at the moment? We've just had a comment in the chat with someone who's unable to see. Looks like it's good. Everyone can.
I'm on cam. Okay, I just thought it'd be nice, as well, we're talking about visuals, to show you a few. So this is the article I've put up in our Value and Visuals site, which I just suggest popping in and having a look at if you get chance, and Headspace. It goes through some things that you can look at with organising, what you're looking at, auditing yourself, all of those sort of things. So dip in and have a look at that if you can. There's some good ideas as well, and lots of links. Other than that, what I really wanted to talk about, what I thought were the main issues for us at the moment, and that is the messaging, which is instantly around health and safety and the economics of getting going again. So it's the sort of literally how we are prioritizing those things, how we're adapting our business, and how we're getting those messages across, and how we can do that visually. So I've got 4 examples of some people that I think are doing some of those things fairly well. And the first one was really around messaging about health and safety and mental health. And that is the importance of being informative to people. And like Phil was saying, don't stop telling people stuff, keep communicating. It's really important to be out there. as much as you can for your, and how is relevant for your company. So how are you adapting your business for health and safety? And I did think that these guys, you all got that okay? I've got that really, really well. This is such a lovely example. It's Wilmot Dixon. They've just had a photo shoot done, and they are just literally visualizing how things, they've adapted to things at work on sites and in the offices, or well, it looks like a canteen actually, hard at work. I thought that was brilliant because it's very simple. If you tried to describe that in writing, it would have been quite tedious, and I don't think you'd have got through it really. It is a typical kind of a picture sells 1,000 words. Plus they can repurpose those brilliantly. They'll get so much ROI out of those images. So that's, I thought, was a great example. The second one, bless you, was to make sure that you really analyze everything that you do, you put out there, because it's really instant, the messaging that you get on visuals, and it sticks with people. So if you don't really get that messaging right, you could find yourselves in a little bit of trouble. So for instance, the tone of the images, again, it's kind of building on what Phil said. It's about being showing some empathy, that you really understand where people are at, and be really careful with getting the wrong message. Something as simple as, you might have some images on your website that are showing crowds of people. You know, you might just want to rethink, either put some messaging across the top, or just step back and really think about what you're saying. It's really important, more than ever, to get that right. Metro Bank, I picked for this one. I don't know whether there might be a better example, to be honest, but I did think that they were doing some good stuff. This is their Twitter account. Thought that maybe their strapline, that irritates me at the top. Can you know if you can see my cursor? You know, that you could have spent an effort and put the other P in. people, you know, but anyway, side point. They've got something pinned at the top on a nice little visual saying, "You're our top priority," building on from their strapline. I did think actually that might be quite nice as a little video, so make it a bit more personal. But then they've kind of built on that approach with the mental health stuff, and it was Mental Health Weeks. They've gone into that. They've got some content that's come from staff. Going down a bit, they have this image here, which I thought was lovely on the left. And it's not actually about health and safety in their stores, they call them actually, but it demonstrates it. So they've got their messaging on point there. They haven't just used an old stock shot, you know, an old shot of the bank. So I thought that was dead good. What else have I got on here? Building confidence, security. It's really important, that whole thing about empathizing with our clients and our staff and helping them to feel safe. So I thought actually local store Dock Reels do this really well. You know, they're up and running again, bless them. They're brilliant, aren't they, Dock Reels? And they just, like, for instance, there's this one in the middle here where they're actually demonstrating things. They put a face to it as well, which I thought was really nice. And they have shown their story right the way through. So you can see it probably started around the gloves area. I haven't looked at the date of that was posted, but and then it kind of goes through. Then they put some old stuff up, which is probably because that's what they had. And then some of their staff locked in. So really, and then we're back open, and what they're doing in relation to that. So it's really lovely. They also respond very quickly, which is really nice. So for instance, somebody asked a question about these guys being close together, and they've responded in a really nice way. So brilliant. The fourth was this. Now, these people, I'm sorry, these are one of the, I know there's a lot of what they call Thai noodle places, but actually I really miss a Wagamama's. I think they've done it really well. Again, building on what Phil said, they have been very gracious in their giving. They have got a brilliant hashtag called, I've had to write it down, what's it? Walk from home. But you know, it's great. And they do free webinars, and not free webinars, free videos that you can watching live streamed and on YouTube, I think they are. And they've got them on IGTV. So they just talk about how, I think it's their head chef, this guy, and he talks about how to make some of their key recipes that people are missing. So all of that sort of stuff is just lovely, and reaching out to people in a really generous kind of way. And that was sort of the key points that I've got, really. So it's about kind of exactly what Phil was saying about not selling to people and being generous and empathetic, whilst acknowledging that, you know, we are going to have to make a business and sell some stuff at some stage as soon as we can. Is that helpful?
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Susie. That's particularly the Wagamama example is a really good one of what we were talking about of providing value and kind of reinforcing the brand with something that's helpful to people.
Yes. Yeah.
Really nice. Just to come over to Lawrence now as our in-house networker and LinkedIn specialist. I wanted to ask you about. I speak to a lot of founders and entrepreneurs who are really good in a room with people, really sort of natural kind of storytellers and networkers, and then they sometimes struggle with kind of translating that into social channels and into the virtual world. So just wondering if you could speak to that and some of the lessons you've learned about how to move your presence online.
Yeah, sure. I think this is the point where I blubber and ruin all my words when I speak and completely ruin the facade that you've very delicately built up for the audience. But I'm conscious that there's quite a lot of people on this chat, and it would be really good to get some kind of participation from them as well. So I might just ask a few questions. I haven't really prepped questions, but as I'm going through, I notice this is quite an interesting period for everybody. You know, particularly trying to make a transition from networking face to face and having your kind of go-to people, whether that be in a room full of entrepreneurs where you're trying to, you know, begin the networking circuit, or maybe you just want to pop across the road to someone that you work close to, or maybe an office next door, and we can't do that now. So, I mean, who's more active now in a networking scene than they were before? Maybe just answer yes or no. Who feels that their networking or interaction with other people has gone up or down? So yes for up and no for down. Yeah.
2 yeses, 1 no. About the same, just different.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
No.
Such a mix.
Yeah. Pretty much half and half, right?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, for me, maybe just to add some context, I mean, I used to run a networking company in Croydon that was all about making friends with other business owners and decision makers in the area. We hosted around 24 events a year. And that was a really, really good opportunity to, you know, allow people to get to know one another without feeling they need to, you know, get loads of sales in the bank. And it was all built on the premise that Susie and Phil have both spoken about today, which is around empathy and, you know, starting with the individual. And, you know, the rules are pretty much the same as far as I know on social. You want to make sure as much as possible that whether I'm speaking with Susie one-to-one or if I'm speaking to a whole group and an audience on social media, everyone essentially is looking for the same type of pattern in the conversation. You know, am I being listened to? Is there an information overload, or is it simple to understand? You know, is the speaker being positive or negative about what they're talking about? You know, are they being maybe overly emotive about what they're delivering and maybe not rationalizing or being logical about what they're talking about? So, I mean, really what you want is someone to recognize or put their own personal agenda aside is the main thing. Comes back to Susie's point, which is really interesting, which is, you know, how do you go about making friends with somebody or making someone feel comfortable and trusting you, because that's all that sales it really is, just trust that manifests into a relationship, without completely putting aside the business side of things. Because when you go networking, as much as people do, yeah, they are friendly and they, you know, they want to be making good first impressions. There is always that personal agenda, but it comes back to the same points, you know. Is the conversation you're having valuable to the audience that you're trying to serve? You know, are you being personable? Are you actually putting the other person first? And are you designing your whole service around the positive experience for the user rather than, you know, it being easy for you? And it really is that case of empathy and design thinking, I would say. So, you know, in terms of transitioning, I think the question is, you know, is this right for you to be networking like this, or could this be an opportunity for you to do some research in your area and make sure that your own services are better? You know, are your services actually ready to accept more customers and using Zoom and other external online services as a way to branch out and meet more people? Or actually, is this a good opportunity to observe and see how other people are doing it, and almost do a huge competitor analysis during COVID? Because, you know, I think there are tons of businesses out there that maybe would benefit from just seeing how other people do it, like, you know, the Wagamama example and other things like that. So, I mean, I'd be really interested, again, just another question that's come to my mind. Why are people here in a sentence? You know, what would your personal agenda be? Is it to, you know, speak to other people, meet other people? Is it to, you know, learn something in particular? Are you trying to stay active and, you know, engaged in a particular area? So just really curious to know, you know, what are your reasons for being a participant on this call? What's your agenda for Saffron? Such a flirt.
Creepy.
Yeah.
I've just seen a really interesting comment come by from Jeremy Taylor saying it's different. I don't have to travel to network as it comes to my home. I think that's an interesting point. We've been doing some work at the centre recently with a client talking about social anxiety, especially, and something that's was an unexpected insight that's sort of come out since working on that piece of research is that a lot of people who are anxious in a networking environment or anxious in a calling someone they don't know kind of environment feel a little bit more comfortable with the kind of structure that networking over Zoom kind of affords them.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I know that you and I, Joseph, have benefited from the ideas introduced within Sussex Innovation, the breakout rooms you can do on Zoom, and you know, getting a group of people that otherwise you wouldn't be able to interact with one-to-one in the workplace because, you know, that you just don't have any reason to randomly form a conversation group with them, which you can do really easily with Zoom. I mean, just running through some of the things that people are coming back with here, you know, people are pretty interested in learning about how to network, you know, ideas for social media, new skills for networking with other innovators. And this just reminds me, I'll conclude on this point because I realize, you know, it's just a quick kind of question time at this point. But when I was working in, you know, running my own company, we had 4 or 5 employees at one point and worked with a lot of different people when the events were kicking off. And it was a similar discussion around, you know, how do we network effectively? Some people, you know, just kind of natural with it and will go with the flow and just try and make friends, which might be the easiest equation to go for. But there is actually a methodology which I'm happy to share if anyone wanted to kind of make some notes on, a bit of a foolproof way to engage with someone if it is completely alien to you to start a conversation or to feel like you're getting something out of the conversation. And it's just an acronym which I call friendly. So F, no brainer, stands for friendly, so just be friendly. R is kind of be relatable, so, you know, obviously listen to the person, and, you know, if something is in common, then expand on that. You know, try and find something in common with a person, make yourself human, maybe even appear somewhat vulnerable and admit a mistake or a stupid story that you made just to break the ice. I is a lot more inquisitive, so you need to really be asking that person as many questions about themselves as you can, because paying interest into other people is, you know, everyone likes talking about themselves, and actually a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do that. They feel silly for kind of doing it of their own accord, so inviting people to speak is always a good way to understand them and get the conversation flowing. So using how questions and why questions rather than what questions, or sorry, how and what questions rather than things that are closed, you know, yes or no questions, and genuinely paying interest into people. So E stands for enthusiasm. So be enthusiastic about what you're talking about, but also what they're talking about. And then normally in a conversation, someone will ask you about yourself. And that's the point for you to kind of, which is where the ND comes in, is be direct, and now be direct about what you do, but also be direct about what you're looking for and how what they've said to you might apply to, you know, how you might be able to work together. Maybe you can't, you know, you just say it's really nice to meet you, but there's no synergy. But, you know, if there is, that will normally lead to the L and Y, which is leading to a yes. So just have an idea in mind of what you're aiming to go there for, but don't make it too stringent. I would suggest, you know, just trying to gain some business cards or preliminary agreements to meetings is always a good one, just to, you know, have that in mind. It doesn't have to be selling there on the spot, because these things do really base themselves on trust, and that can take a long time. So there, that was my one takeaway for anyone who really needs a framework. It's come in handy for me.
Lots of people writing stuff down in notepads, I'm sure, at the other end. I've just seen a question come in through the Q&A section. Please do put your questions to us, and we'll try and get around to them. Anya has asked something which I think leans into the next question I was going to ask Phil. So Anya said, as a B2B service provider, I use mostly LinkedIn and Twitter as my social media streams. Do you recommend that I stay focused there, or should I branch out to Instagram or Facebook? And I wanted to ask you, Phil, about you know, how you go about sort of planning and understanding where and how you can provide value to people on social. So what to post and what channels to post it on.
Yeah, so the answer to that is kind of simple, but yet complex all at the same time, because there's a bit of work that goes into it. But it's all to do with target audience profiling. So if you are like Anya, if you're B2B and you need to do an exercise, so what we do with our clients, we've got a target audience profiling doc that we send to them, because we want to get them to do a brain dump of who are your target audience, where are they most active, what kind of thing, why are you posting, what message do you want to get across. So it's that whole thing of why are you doing this in the first place, which, by the way, we can send you a copy of. You can have that for free and use it on yourself. So you've got the target audience profiling element, and we also go to another level and do like an audit of your competitors. So if your competitors are active on 2 channels only, so Anya, for yourself, LinkedIn and Twitter as an example, it's probably quite likely that if you've done the target audience persona and gone, it's B2B, you look at age demographic, you look at the product that you're selling, it's probably quite likely that LinkedIn and Twitter, once you've worked through this document, are going to be the ones for you. And if your competitors are also only on LinkedIn and Twitter, I think you can safely say that that's where you should spend your time. However, if you look at your competitors and 2 of them are getting amazing engagement on Instagram, it'd be worth exploring. But it would only be worth exploring, and I think, Susie, you'd back on this one, is Instagram is a really visual channel. If you've got nothing that's visual and nothing interesting to say, I wouldn't waste your time doing it. So it's really all comes down to the work, the prep work you do at the beginning, where it says, why am I doing this in the first place? What message do I want to get across? What's the tone of voice? And where are my target audience active on social? The key thing is, remember, you're not posting for yourself, you're posting for them. So you want to be able to work out that I'm B2B, so I'm going to make much more use of my personal profile on LinkedIn, as well as just the company page. I think the company page is one of the hardest things to grow on LinkedIn. They've got a new invite service, but it's quite a static thing. It's very reliant on organic. Your personal profile, you can connect with other people. The more people you connect with, obviously, the more reach your content's going to get, the more chance you've got of networking, looking at Lawrence's area. but ideally it's connecting with the right people so the right people see your content, and it's posting stuff that's going to engage with them. But a very long-winded answer is target audience profiling right at the beginning. Otherwise you're kind of just randomly putting stuff out without much strategy.
Yeah, and you obviously want to avoid the problem of spreading yourself too thin. So focusing on the channel where you're going to get the most bang for your buck is kind of crucial.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone's, you know, we're a small business. You guys are small businesses. We're busy, and spending hours creating some really nice images and stuff like that in tools like Canva and being really active on Instagram is great. But if you're spending hours a week doing it and your target audience isn't active on it, you've wasted that time. So really understand, as I said, where your audience is active is the most important thing. But as I said, I can send anyone a Daisy's got a copy, or we'll send it round. So if anyone wants to just use the document that we do, feel free.
Yeah, do keep an eye out for comments from Daisy in the chat. She'll be sharing lots of interesting and useful tidbits as we carry on. Also, all attendees will be getting a follow-up email after this webinar. So there'll be lots of useful business there as well. Susie, well, Phil's just touched on there the issue of time and the challenge of, you know, producing great content quickly and often on a budget and under current circumstances without being able to go out and take photographs particularly easily. So I just wanted to ask you about any tips you might have for making the best use of your existing kind of collateral and how you would go about kind of sorting through what a business has already got in their bank.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I do touch on this in the article actually that I pointed out earlier, because I actually think that visuals are incredibly versatile and you can repurpose them to an enormous extent. So like the construction example I gave you to start with, that's a classic example of how they could use each one of those images could be used, you know, loads of times. So on lots of different channels, it could have different messages on it. It could be the focus of an article. So, you know, remember how much you can use just one thing. So it's like anything in life. You know, if you put a lot into it to start with, you're going to have a nice big bank of visuals that you can use. If you have processes where it's, you know, you've got a nice process of how to take a quick photo on your phone and maybe do a quick edit and store it somewhere, rather than having to think, oh my goodness, which way around do I put the phone, where's the camera, you know, and go through all those bits which take the time. I mean, I can do it now in minutes, you know, literally a couple of minutes from picking up my phone to posting it, because I've practiced and I have a routine. So I do think that's really important for people to just spend a bit of time on it. You know, if you've got some time at the moment, I do think it's something that would be very valuable. Something else is that we've been doing at the moment with people, we've done, during lockdown, we've done a couple of video edits of stock. So we've done them for a couple of schools. So it's stock that they've already got, or it's some screen sharing. And I have edited that together. There's lots of stuff that I've put on with, I don't know if anyone's heard of Envato. It's somewhere you can get stock video really easily and very nice. That's the other thing actually. Make sure you've got a list of stock sites that you know you can use that's got stuff that is relevant for your brand and is copyright and licensed, ready for you to use. There's loads of really good ones starting to appear now. So the more you have all those things ready, the more you can do. So repurposing is a bit of a knack, but it's absolutely vital for the world of social media, because there's so much you can get out of one set of visuals that you've put some time and energy into.
Yeah, I would echo that. It took me quite a while to realise that the one or two stock photography sites that I was relying on were also being relied on by everybody else. So weren't particularly distinct in their kind of visual style from what a lot of other brands are putting out there.
You know, that there's a really funny thing you can do, which also is in this article. I say funny, it's also sometimes quite traumatic. So try and do a reverse image search through Google Image Search or InkSpot, one of those, where you actually can see where a photo that you might be using for everything that maybe demonstrates your staff room or something, or staff team. And actually you'll find there was one example that I've used that is used on anything from porn sites to a garage in Louisiana or something. They're all over the place. So you just have to be a little bit careful with that. So it's not just the legal stuff, but it's also about, is it really doing you justice? I think it's really important that you spend a bit of time on it. I know it's difficult, but it is a really important immediate impact that it has on your customers and your business community. So do yourself proud, really. I went waffling there.
I've got one other tip on that note, actually. A tool that I use quite a lot is search.creativecommons.org, which is basically a site that compiles all other image sites and kind of auto searches through for things that are tagged as being usable for modification or repurposing for commercial use. So that includes Google Images, Flickr, and lots of the main kind of stock photography sites.
Do you mind if I just put a rider on that, actually? You've got to be really careful with those, because they often in the small print say that they don't take any responsibility for any issues that you might have. So they often just scrape the internet and tell you that they're free and that you can use them, but that might be just what they picked up or that's there at the time. So I would, they can be brilliant, those sites. Absolutely get where you're coming from, but I would personally recommend having a couple of sites are your sort of style, and that each one, like Unsplash, is going to be cool to use. Mm-hmm. Just a rider.
That's a good rider.
Don't need to get sued, Joseph.
And I was going to say, just quickly, another good one you guys may know of, but we use it a lot. It's called Canva. So canva.com. The reason it's great is it's got a stock library that you can use, but you can also upload your own images, and you can easily overlay wording, text, logos, so you can brand. So let's say you've produced something, or you have a photo, you can brand it. You can take stock images and brand it, and on a base level, it's completely free. So probably worth checking out.
Yeah, we use that a lot. We're professional.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So yeah, it's brilliant.
It's a real incredibly easy to get the hang of all of the tools within that, definitely, compared to the difficulty curve of learning Photoshop, for example. Is slightly more challenging. Lawrence, we've had a few discussions recently about the difference between a personal brand online and a kind of organizational brand, and how those two things kind of speak to each other and reinforce each other. So just wondered what your advice is for someone who's looking to build their personal brand online as well as for their business.
It's going to be different for everybody. I think there are some pretty universal rules when it comes to building your own personal brand, and a lot of it is just to do, and I know someone kind of echoed this in the comments, you get out of it what you put in, and so actually creating content regularly is a real big step for a lot of people. And a point that you mentioned earlier is that some people are very good at networking in person, but they don't have that kind of gumption or need or any desire to do anything online, which if you're actually looking to grow the company is not a fantastic strategy, because it's such a beautiful system and platform to get as many people viewing what you're up to as possible. So I think really the question is what's authentic about you, and why should people listen to you? I'm going to be controversial here and maybe just ask a couple of questions and challenge things that were said by some of the other participants in terms of, you know, really niching down into your social media platforms. I mean, why? You know, there's tons and tons of users on things that I would never use. I mean, I'd rarely use Facebook anymore. I haven't got a YouTube channel, but that's an obvious one. You know, companies are using WhatsApp more and more often. Instagram is ridiculously popular in comparison to even Twitter and, you know, LinkedIn. LinkedIn doesn't even make the top 15 social media platforms in terms of active users. So I think really what you want to do is find your people, or allow people to find you, whatever platform they happen to be on, because we're all shifting entities at the end of the day. You know, it might be that I'm on Instagram and I'm just looking for a holiday picture to kind of make me smile, and I come across a motivational speaker that I love, but I wasn't there for that, you know. So your content might be perfect for those people scrolling through, and with the revolution of hashtags, it's quite easy for people to drill down into areas that might be considered quite niche on those social media platforms. So, you know, Instagram, although it's not ideal or professed as an ideal platform for, let's say, graphic designers or you know, business people, actually, you know, there are tons and tons of business people doing great stuff on there. So video is a no-brainer. I think if you're not doing video, then you really should consider doing video, or having someone in your company do video. Here's a question just to throw it out and to get people discussing again. I mean, if you're thinking about your own social media experience and you're scrolling through a feed, what typically captures your attention most? Is it a graphic? Is it a video? Is it a picture of a real person? Is it an animation? Is it just text? Curious to know what people think there. You know, what do you find yourself stopping on when you're scrolling more?
We just had a question from Uzma saying, videos on LinkedIn. I think absolutely yes, to reinforce what Lawrence was just saying. Yeah, video is something that will often make me stop if I'm scrolling through a LinkedIn newsfeed. One big tip is, if you can and you have the resources and the time to do it, always add subtitles to your videos on social, because the amount of times people will be scrolling through on public transport or in the office and not want to listen to the sound, it's definitely worth including some subtitles even with a video.
Yeah, really cool points. Just kind of filtering through the comments here, you've got a lot of people saying pictures of people, striking image, interesting looking video, you know, image of people, again, images work, video and interesting pictures. So, I mean, there's a common theme here, and I think it just runs through our genetic makeup as human beings. It's a very community-driven species. You know, we are looking to learn about what other people are doing, and it's in our nature to, you know, when you're walking down the street, you're not really looking at like drains and lampposts. You're looking at the people walking past, and you're looking at the images on the shop windows. So, I mean, I think really, if you can present yourself that in an authentic way, and find what is authentically you and what you're passionate about and what you're skilled on, then the value is almost a byproduct of that. And something that I was going to do with the social media club within Sussex Innovation, which I just sketched out here on paper, so excuse my inability to draw circles well, but you know, it's just a Venn diagram of you know, what your passion is, what your skills are, what pays, and also what is significant purpose in society. So what does society actually need? And if you find things that tend to coalesce in that middle section, you know, and come together, then if you're passionate about that and you're skilled about that and the world needs that and it pays, then there's no downside to posting. And it's just getting over that original initial fear of posting, which is easier said than done. But what you'll find is the downside to not posting is way bigger than the downside to posting. I mean, you know, there might be people that don't appreciate you within your initial network, but the people that do appreciate you are going to like and comment and share. And eventually, you know, they're probably going to be sharing similar interests with people in their own peer group. So, you know, I would suggest do some selfie videos, do the Venn diagram, find out what you're interested in, then do the videos, upload the pictures. If you don't have anything interesting to say, and I know Phil said, you know, if you don't have anything interesting to say, then stay away from Instagram. That might be true, and there are a lot of people who talk a lot of rubbish on Instagram, and typically they're the ones that are selling to you, and you're not really connecting with them. But if you find out what your passion is and what you're skilled at, and you talk about it in an authentic way, then go on Instagram and talk about it on Instagram and record videos on Instagram and pictures. And if you don't have a skill set which is particularly creative and you can't create content, then just document your own journey, because there will be people out there who you're actually a few steps ahead of in whatever you're interested in, that will find you know, find solace in what you're talking about, and you would encourage them to, you know, follow you and learn from you, and you know, be a part of your journey. I think that's what it's all about, you know. So.
And Lawrence, I agree with that entirely, because you're looking at it as personal branding. When I was mentioning it was more from a company page perspective. So if you're in professional services, you're an HR consultancy, you might not be quite right for Instagram, but as the owner, you might be, because it's around selling your personality. So it's just understanding those kind of differences as well. But as Lawrence says, play with it. If it doesn't work, fine. You know, you haven't lost anything. But if time is of the essence, then we would always advise focusing on where you know your core channels are.
I think that it comes to this question of you know, how much capacity you have, and you know, fatigue can set in very easily if you're covering multiple channels at once. I've had a few people starting to ask me recently about TikTok as a platform, which I really need to learn more about because I'm not up on the trends. But it seems to me that it's a similar platform to something like Instagram, where personality is king. And you know, if you're selling yourself as part of the business, TikTok seems like a perfectly kind of viable way of doing that, and somewhere that you might be able to access an audience that isn't as active on some of the older social media channels. Yeah, I just thought I'd open up to the panel, really, how you see those kind of those cycles of social media that we seem to keep seeing, where people will abandon one channel in their droves and then move to another channel. Should businesses try and keep up, or should they stick to what they know and what they know they're good at?
I would just immediately say I agree with what Phil said, basically, because we TikTok is something that's quite interesting, because it's obviously getting absolutely huge, and it's really easy to kind of to get onto that awful road where you're thinking, oh, there's something else I need to be doing, or oh, that's shiny and bright, or you know, and go and try it out and rush into it. But really, it's, and you know, maybe try it personally, just give it a go, see if you enjoy it, see if it works for you as well. But I think from a business perspective particularly, you really need to do what Phil says, and just steadily look at what you need to do first. Do that really well, do the right channels really well, rather than just try and cover all the bases and get slightly panicky and not really achieve anything. That's what I would say.
I guess the fringe benefit of trying something out with a personal account first is, if you do like using the channel and genuinely kind of enjoy being on it, then it's going to be much less of a chore to do it for work purposes as well, right?
Yeah, and also the last thing I'd say is with it as well, when it comes to that target audience, is understanding the age demographic of each social channel. So if you're a young brand selling cool stuff to people under 24, TikTok could work really well, because I think, don't quote me on this exactly, but I think like just over 30% of all users on TikTok are aged between 18 and 24. Whereas I think 45 and over, it's less than 5%. So again, it really does come down to, hey, give it a go. But if you're selling Zimmer frames, TikTok might not be the one for you, because clearly it's the wrong age group. So it's just also understanding what ages of people are on what platform.
Yeah. I did notice.
I think just
sorry, go on.
Sorry. I was just going to pitching on that question, which was, I think I'm somewhere in between you guys and the other alternative, which is to just focus on everything, which is never a good idea. But, you know, everyone's heard of the 80-20 rule. So, you know, if you've got clients that are paying you regularly, you're going to pay attention to them, and that makes perfect sense. But you don't stop looking for new clients, right? And I think it's the same for social media, in that if you can dedicate 80% of your time to what you know and what you trust, there should still be, almost as just a competitor analysis angle, 20% of your time dedicated, whether as a person or as a company, to looking at those new trends. Because I guarantee you, if any of us jumped on TikTok because it was new and that was all we needed to know, and it had like 100,000 users at the time, and we began putting content on there, you'd have an incredibly large following, as long as, you know, you're uploading the videos regularly and you're jumping on the trends and you're doing fun stuff. And it's all about getting involved in things, again, just to test it out. So I'd recommend try everything. Don't ignore the things that work for you, definitely not. But I'd kind of approach it in an 80-20 way. You know, don't shy away from new platforms just because they're new. I'd get on there and just see how it works and see how it goes, you know. There's plenty of people who are, you know, 40s, 50s who are on TikTok, and they're getting sensational like feedback, and everybody loves it because they are an anomaly, you know. So it'd be a trendsetter rather than jumping in when the mass is there, because that's when it becomes noisy and people tend to flee to the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I was driving at with the cycles of social media. You do get that kind of natural dying off of audience at the exact same point that marketeers and advertisers start arriving on platforms generally, which I think is a big part of it. Someone said there's lots of good tips here in the chat. I second that, and recommend, if you haven't had time to read everything as it's going past, if you click the 3 dots at the bottom of your chat window, there's an option to save the chat. So you can go back through and look for any of those useful links and tips afterwards. Just going to do some real quick fire questions in our last few minutes together here. So Kirsten asks, how much time do you spend interacting with other people's and other companies' social media posts, and do you think this is a useful way to build up a following?
Yes, it's useful. Do it regularly. I don't know if there's a specific amount of time, but if I'm on LinkedIn and I'm posting, then I'd spend at least kind of 5-10 minutes just scrolling through and appreciating things that you enjoy. So no specific time frame, but certainly if you're on there, engage.
Yeah, I'd say proactively do that. I think that's the biggest way to increase your following, really, and engagement, and make it worthwhile, is to actually go out and actively seek not just influencers in the area, but actually people you want to communicate to, talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's maintaining a bit of kind of discipline with it, really. It's I've found one of the ways of ensuring that I actually stick to it and keep doing that kind of thing is just say, you know, here's my 15-minute window at the start and the end of every day, when all I'm doing is taking stuff in and responding to it, rather than thinking about more kind of proactive strategy. We've had a question in the Q&A about how to balance being present on LinkedIn as both a company and as the company director.
That's a good question. Lawrence or Phil?
Go on, Phil, you can grab that if you like, or I'm happy to answer on it.
Yeah, well, maybe we both can. I think simple answer for me is building. So as the company director, come across as human, come across as authentic. You can talk about things as an individual that you can't necessarily as a company page. So what's the old adage? People buy from people. So play with that, show your personality as the company director. Whatever that looks like, whatever your goal is and whatever you want to come across as, show that as a human. The company page is obviously somewhere where you're kind of doing more announcements, more kind of team stuff, more, you know, so you look at it differently. But I just think personally, as a company director, if you go through LinkedIn, it's quite clear to distinguish who does it well as a personal post and who does it well as a company. They are very different. You're selling yourself, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree. I think just by the nature of LinkedIn, as Phil's pointed out a few times, the company pages tend to just get less traction. But, you know, still very important, and something that we're working on internally at Sussex is leveraging the personalities within the company, because you can all have your own individual posts on your own individual pages, which might be to do with your own skills and passions and what we spoke about before, and your own authentic self. But sometimes that does drip into the overall mission of the company. Hopefully, if they've recruited you because you fit the, you know, the kind of mission and the vision of the company. So I think you can always leverage that personability from the, you know, the personal profiles, and then use the same tact in the company profiles. So any decent company with a decent strategy on social media will probably be leveraging the characters that work well on the personal profiles and asking them to contribute in a similar way, but with more alignment to the vision for the company. And then naturally, as Phil said, you know, any milestones that the company are achieving, you want to make sure that you're telling the audience about that from a more of a top-down perspective. But
and one tip I would say with the company page, encourage your team to comment on company page posts, to like company page posts, to share company page posts. The LinkedIn algorithm loves comments. So if you've got a team of people, get them to put their personality in the comments, because that will then increase the reach of your company page posts as well. So pretty important.
And there's a feature on LinkedIn whenever you post to the company page that you can set to automatically alert everyone within the company who's registered as an employee as well. So that's a good quick way of making sure that people respond to posts. I think you're only allowed to do it once a week, but useful for anything you want to amplify. We've still got questions flooding in. Unfortunately, we're getting towards the end of our hour. I feel like we could have gone for 2. Maybe we'll do a follow-up in a month or 2's time. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Make sure that we give due respect to the European Regional Development Fund, who have been very helpfully funding this work, delivering these webinars. Thank you to all of our panelists. Do check out Value in Visuals and Economy Social for all your social media support needs, or indeed speak to us at Sussex Innovation. I think Daisy is going to share in the chat a link to our inquiry form. If you have any needs in social media, in content marketing, or any form of business support beyond that, whether it's research or fundraising or anything that your business may need, do get in touch and we'll see if we can help you using some of that Regional Development Fund money to hopefully deliver some of that work for you at a reduced cost as well. Next week's webinar, the link to which will be also appearing shortly in the chat, is going to be all about leadership in uncertain times. So if you're managing people, or if you know someone who manages people, do let them know about that. Thanks very much to all my panelists.
Bye.
thanks a lot, Joseph. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, take care, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye-bye.